Today, we're talking about peer masterminds here at the Braintrust Professional Institute. We are coaches, trainers, facilitators. We work one-on-one coaching leaders, deliver management training to teams, and share our knowledge as keynote speakers. But there is one mode of learning that many leaders have not had experience with, the peer mastermind group. A peer mastermind group is a facilitated group with 5 to 8 participants, all of whom are running successful organizations. Each person learns from the experience of others, and the combined mastermind is an accelerant for business and leadership growth. It provides an opportunity to build connections with the other leaders, test drive ideas with your peers, and exposes you to impactful new business concepts. Here today to offer insights on how to leverage a peer mastermind group is Randall Craig. A little about Randall. He has founded several successful startups, held a long-time position at a Big Four consulting firm. He was a senior executive at an American public company, author of 8 books. He's in the Speaker Hall of Fame, a master facilitator. He's helped over 100 organizations scale, and he works with me at the Braintrust Professional Institute, helping organizations grow their businesses. Okay, so Randall, you are an executive coach. You have been coached as the executive. You are part of a peer mastermind group and you have led peer groups. So how do peer mastermind groups fit in?
Boy, I let me ask some questions. Let me ask some questions to all of our viewers, listeners. Where do you get your ideas? How do you raise your game? Who do you test drive your ideas with? Where do you get practical insights that can actually help you grow your business? In a certain sense, being a leader is the loneliest job in the world, and it's very difficult. Who can you have tough conversations with? Who really truly understands your job and the pressures that you have? Your peers probably don't. Your family probably doesn't. The board of directors is if you have one hopefully nose in, hands out, but they don't know the daily pressures or some of the other things as well. Who can you celebrate your wins with, or who you can commiserate some of the missteps that eventually will happen? Is it your family, your friends, your colleagues, your direct reports? Everybody has a place to play in this, but the one group that you can do some of this stuff with is a peer mastermind, because they're also in that loneliest job in the world. They also know some of the strengths, some of the issues that you have. Now, there are other places where you can get these questions answered. Business coaching, a lot of my clients, for example, rely on me for this. It's great. Okay. If you've got an advisory board, that might be helpful, but once again, they're you don't meet them very often. And once again, they're a little bit more disconnected. So, it's really that peer group. So then the question is, where do you find that peer group that might actually understand where you can have these conversations? Well, you could do it at a golf club. You could do it from your alumni, from business school, maybe your professional association. But all of these people are 2 steps away from your actual business. They may not be, they might be too big, too small, earlier or later in their career. They may not have the right, they certainly don't have the intensity. They don't have the let's get together every 1 or 2 months to actually have those kinds of conversations, right? And, you don't want to always be taking from them. You also want to be giving them. But there isn't this social contract, if you will, between, people in your golf club or your alumni group or whatever it is. And that's a bit of a challenge. And that, once again, is specifically where peer mastermind groups will have a role to play. That's how they fit in.
It is said, when you want to go fast, go alone. And when you want to go far, go together. Like, how do you think does this adage apply to the peer mastermind group?
Um, I think it does. I think it does. But most leaders have got a lot of going it alone, right? They're thinking about what that strategy is. There's that very critical meeting that they can take, and it's all on them. All of the eyes are just on them. So yeah, go fast by go alone. Okay. When you go as a group, you bring people along. That in a certain sense is the essence of being a great manager, a great leader, and everything. But if you think about it, if you make all of the important decisions on your own, are you worrying that you might miss something? And if you're with a peer mastermind group, that's one opportunity to get unbiased, confidential guidance from an experienced chair of the group, and also a group of peers who actually understand the issues, may have actually been there themselves, you know. If you think that, your business is being limited by your capacity, if you can get some feedback and some insights from peers where how they brought structure and systems and processes, these are the kinds of things that can be helpful to saying, yeah, I can go alone, but I don't need to do it all by myself. If I've got raw material, input, perspective from the chair of the group and from peers who perhaps have been there and done that before.
You have worked extensively in the association world, the nonprofit sector, where you have challenged countless of association leaders. You have spoken many, many years on how the association business model is arguably antiquated. And that with the internet and so much information available, they're competing with free. But I'm hearing you so strongly talk about the value of those in-person relationships and that peer group. Like, can the argument that the in-person is antiquated apply to also this peer group? Isn't an association like just a larger version of that?
So every association is a little bit differently. Some of them are very open and sharing. Okay, it truly is a collective of people that seem to be aligned and going in the same direction. And you can call anybody; they'll give you some time, give you some quick advice, etc. Other associations are there because people have to be a member of them, and they're almost semi-regulated, to be a CPA, you've got to be a member of the CPA association, for example. Others are members because that's the way that's where they get discounts, right? There's lots of different motivations for becoming part of an association. The idea of getting input and feedback from peers is just one of them. But what's the depth of it? Because, there's a joke, in some businesses, who are members of associations, 10 businesses, 11 business models, right? So not everybody's the very same, and not everybody wants to engage on a deeper level. So let me give you a very specific example. You're the CEO, you've got a particular challenge with respect to, I don't know, whatever it is, okay, engagement with your senior team, or critical thinking with the mid-tier, or you've grown to a particular point and your systems or structures are stretched a little bit and everything. So guess what? You go to a chapter meeting of your association, and around the table you've got a 5 or 10 minute conversation with somebody, and they don't know your business so well, you don't know their business so well. Even if you know them, as individually, there isn't the depth of knowledge of where they're coming from, and they don't know your information so well. So the depth, the quality of feedback they can provide you is a lot less, right? So there's a place for the association to build the beginnings of those relationships. But where I think a peer mastermind takes it to a very different level is all of a sudden you've got a group of people around the table, and the depth that you can go into having conversations about your business. And over time, everybody learns a lot more about each other. And therefore, over time, the types of conversations that you might have are going to be very different, right? Because if you put a challenge on the table, everyone already kind of knows what your business is. They kind of understand from other conversations in the past what some of the constraints and issues and unique, advantages your businesses have. So it becomes a higher level. And over time, trust increases as well. I'll also say this, what makes a great peer mastermind is not just the peers, it's also who the chair of the group is, right? So if I were leading a particular group, everyone gets a greater amount of time with me, okay, whether it be a monthly one-on-one or with respect to me bringing some specific IP to the table, excuse me, and that sort of animates a conversation around a particular topic. So, for example, if I'm chairing a group and the question is partner accountability, okay, so fine. We've got a white paper on partner accountability. So a short presentation discussion on that particular topic, and then everybody around the table can chime in with respect to what their experience is or how they might be able to use this concept or debate it. Okay, gee, that's wrong, Randall. What if we looked at it this way? Okay, and all of a sudden, the mastermind, if you will, is much better than the single mind because there's some things that you can do together as individuals that you can't do by yourself as an individual, right? So there's a place for professional associations, right? But if you just happen to randomly choose a bunch of people, where's the structure? Who's going to do all the work to bring it all together, to organize it, to challenge, if you will, individuals, okay, to provide that little bit of extra, if you will, in terms of IP that'll help grease the wheels. And by the way, facilitation is actually a skill that is a learned skill that not every leader actually has. So making sure that there's somebody who actually has got experience as a facilitator, who's the group chair, can make a dramatic difference in terms of the impact that a peer mastermind group can have, you know, given your participation. It's very, very infrequent that people are able to successfully put together a mastermind group that is without a chair. Okay, and it's just very, very, very infrequent. And
That was
obviously,
my next question. My next question was going to be this mastermind that you are a part of. You do not have a designated overseer or advisor or facilitator. Talk to me about how that choice was made and how the presence or absence of that leader facilitator impacts the group.
so the group that I'm in right now, interestingly, does not have a facilitator because four of us are all professional facilitators. And so, and all four of us bring significant IP to the table. All of us have written many books. All of us have built businesses that are specifically in the advisory world. Okay, and because we're all in the facilitation business, if you will, we're able to rotate that particular function amongst all of us. In other groups I've been part of, it's been led by a person. Okay, and I'll tell you one of the things that's very good about having a leader is that I shouldn't say leader. It's really more the chair that's causing it all to happen. One of the reasons why that's so effective is because all of the time that it takes to corral everybody and make sure that people are actually getting value out of it is not fair to give to one person or to even to rotate to different people. It's a fair amount of work. I also think, you know, what do you really want to get out of a peer mastermind group is not just we get together, you know, every 2 months, right? We get together for a, you know, 2-day retreat, etc. But I think what happens is, imagine we've got a peer mastermind group where there's a lot of sharing, there's no new ideas being added by the chair. Okay. The next month there isn't a meeting, but there is a one-on-one between you as the participant and the chair of the group. And that's kind of where you could take some of these ideas and kind of land the plane. Okay. You know, you get together for 2 days, excuse me, once a year where you're able to dive deep into particular topics, etc. So a lot of preparation before that particular mini retreat, right? Gee, there needs to be some infrastructure so that the group can sort of co-create resources and ideas and places where it can be shared, right? Like, you know, there's a lot of stuff that, and of course there's the logistics of it all, right? But there's an awful lot that actually needs to happen that if you don't have a chair, you run the risk of what could have been an amazing experience with a particular group to one that suddenly becomes not so good. I think the other thing that the chair can also do is the chair can make sure that the people in the group are the right people around the table. Can you imagine, for example, the CEO of a multinational, you know, a couple of people in that, along with a couple of founders who are just starting up and looking for their, you know, for their just, you know, looking for their A round of financing? The problems and challenges that they have would be so vastly different. Really, part of the role, the role of the chair is to make sure that the people around the table are similar enough that there's stuff that they could learn, but different enough so that there's stuff they could learn from each other too, but not so different that the feedback is irrelevant, right? So that's the reason why, and in my particular case, it's very, very, very unlikely that you've got everybody who's a professional facilitator, okay, around the table. That's I don't want to say it's an aberration, but it's something that's very, very uncommon.
Lots to unpack. The chair is responsible for recruitment and deciding who joins the group. It's not like by committee.
No, and because there's a cost to joining a peer mastermind group, right? There's no committees here. There's an issue of saying, hey, listen, if we're able to get those 8 people around the table, okay, the chair needs to make sure that number one, each individual person, I don't want to say they need to audition for their spot, but the chair's got to make sure that each person is a good fit, right? That there's enough diversity around the table that everyone can learn something because everyone come from a different perspective. That everybody's sort of in the same stage-ish of their business, plus or minus, because you want some differences there too, right? Each person will spend some time one-on-one with the chair on the bi-monthly the off months, if you will, right? So if the chair isn't sure that everybody can add some value and that they can add value to the individual people, it becomes very, very difficult. There are some networking groups around where people meet every single week for the purpose of sharing referrals, right? And one person's a butcher, and one person runs a coffee shop, and one person's a lawyer, and one person runs a car wash business, and somebody else is a I don't know, something else, etc. And everybody says, well, gee, because we're all different, we can refer business to each other. But okay, so that's fine. A peer mastermind group is not a networking for referrals group where everyone's got to be very different. Okay, you're going to be talking about very, very difficult and challenging stuff. You'll be opening yourself up to people that you want to make sure understand it, and anything that they say might be value. So there's absolutely something there. I should say, by the way, as the relationship of all the participants start to strengthen, what should happen is people will say, well, gee, you know what? Maybe I can do business with them. Or gee, maybe you'll refer somebody. Excuse me, based on the fact that you now have a strong relationship, you know what their business is about, you kind of know where their business values are, etc. But that's not the primary role for a peer mastermind. The question is how to up level your game. How do you make sure that you as a leader are getting to that next level and you're able to move your business to the next level. And as opposed to board of directors or advisors that might sort of chime in just from time to time, this one over here, you're getting a lot of direct experience in a non-judgmental way from people who've either done there before that or come from slightly different angles. Okay. And all of it contextualized through a chair who's been there and done it before as well.
We're talking about the role of the chair. So in an organization, the culture of the organization is by and large defined by the personality of the leader or personalities of leaders. And we see this all the time in the organizations we work with. In a peer group setting, does the selected chair or facilitator have that same impact on the flavor of the group, or is the role of facilitator to take up less space than like a leader of conversation?
That's a really good question, okay? Because a pure facilitator comes to the facilitation with a particular mindset, and the mindset is the answers in the room. My role is to facilitate and to pull out the answers from everybody around the table, and so that is a pure facilitation kind of mindset. In a peer mastermind, the role of the chair is to do actually 2 things during the meetings. Number one is to, well, maybe 3, I should say. Number one is to facilitate, to make sure that we're pulling out everything from everybody as much as possible by asking good questions, to making sure that somebody who's a bit quieter has got some space to actually speak, to make sure that there's no time hogs, so that an issue is explored from all, to ask questions, right? Number two is also to add some value themselves. They are a successful business leader who's already been there and done that, and they don't not have some personal experience, right? And their personal experience is also inflames the conversation, right? And it informs the conversation, right? And I think there's a third angle, which is this. For the most experienced chairs, they actually have a fair amount of IP themselves, and in which case they're also a bit of an educator. But you're educating amongst peers that you're leading. It's kind of like you're the chair, you're not the authoritarian. Everybody there is a CEO or senior executive in their own right, right? And so what you're doing is you're almost leading from behind, but you're also adding value. So it's your question of culture, okay? If you're able to bring a group and build a group where it's collaborative, right? Where people agree to a set of ground rules, if you will, that people agree to put their best selves forward, that they agree to do any of the preparation that's necessary, to agree to all of this, social contract. That makes it a lot easier for people, A, to get the best out of it, but also for other people to get the best out of it as well, right? So yes, without a question, the chair is responsible for setting the culture, right? But part of it is what kind of onboarding is there? What kind of selection of specific people are there? Really? How does the chair in the role as facilitator make sure that people feel comfortable and challenged, and that they're actually getting something out of it? And also, what does the chair do in the one-on-ones? Okay, the goal of the one-on-ones is to help the mastermind participant either land the idea airplane of some of the stuff that was discussed, or to address some very specific to them business issues, so it doesn't clog up the group, if you will, or at least informs how they use their time with the group. But that's also where some of that culture is. It starts with the relationships. And this is not a group of 100 people, and it's not a one-on-one, right? So culture does play an impact. If it's quality, then everyone's going to have a good time. They're going to learn a lot. They'll be challenged, right? And they'll leave with a significantly more value than just what they thought that they would get out of a particular session, because they've learned from other people.
Here we do executive coaching, and we talk internally and we talk with prospects and partners about understanding, the different types of coaches out there, and encouraging people to definitely find the right fit coach for them. So we talk about, for example, a traditional coach, with a framework of questions to help the coached person, come to the decisions themselves. And we talk about the been there before expert who, the person has hired as an extra brain cells to gain from their experience. Is it the same thing with the peer group facilitator? Like, does it matter if the facilitator is a subject matter expert, or is it about the bringing out between them?
Also a great question. It really, really, really is a combination of both. Okay. When the group gets together, it is not the chair's role to be presenting for the entire day or half day, whichever it is, right? That's not that's because when that happens, okay, everyone is just in absorb mode, and the real magic happens during the discussion. Okay. And sometimes, so for example, if I'm presenting a particular topic at the very beginning, which might be, part of the particular agenda, right? There's a discussion amongst everybody, right? And then the next segment of the agenda might be where everyone's got a chance to put a challenge to the group. At my shop, here's the issues. Here's a particular issue I'm having difficulty dealing with. I'd love some perspective, and everybody gets a chance to chime in based on their experience, etc. Right? So when everyone's chiming in, the chair of the group, their role is to facilitate. Right? Their role isn't to to educate, right? On the other hand, at the very beginning, it's a little bit more of an educator, right? So the role flip flop, flip flop, flip flop, and that's one of the reasons why it's very, very tough to find people who would be a good chair if you've done it before. You know, do you understand how to flip between educator, facilitator, peer, and knowing when you've got to be in those types of roles, right? So it's a good question for those reasons.
You're talking about this dynamic interplay and people sharing. Um, Post-COVID world, many things are still over Zoom, over Teams, and there's tremendous benefit. We can bring experience and people together much more easily from all over the world. But that interface, so much has been said and written about, and there will be much, much more to come in the future years on the impact of it. But is it, given the nature of virtual, do you think would be ideal for this to be in person? Like,
Oh,
it's
no
very hard.
question. No question. No question. No question. If it could possibly be in person, it's stronger.
So would it be better to have less perfectly fitting, compatible in the same role, same experience, less of that good fit and have it in person to get that dynamic in the room? Or is it more important to get that good fit, similar experience, similar minds, like, and then get
Virtual.
the best fit virtually?
So, if you're going to spend, 3/4 of a day together, or possibly a day together, doing it virtually is so tiring, right? It's so easy to get distracted. It's so easy to check out, right? And, because there's distractions of whether it's email or somebody coming into your office or who knows what, right? So it's just really hard logistically to do that. My experience is the most you can do with a Peer Mastermind online is call it between 2 and 3 hours, and even that's a bit of a challenge, right? What I would say is this: if, for example, you find yourself in a Peer Mastermind, okay, and it's a virtual one, you've got to make sure that the first retreat actually happens in person. Because at that particular time, you'll have enough time to dig in to the relationships and understanding kind of where everybody's coming from, right? And that sort of sets the tone and sets up for the year of actual meetings. And this is really, really important. And then, okay, the rest, let's see how that virtual works, right? And if it doesn't, then you gotta change it up, if you will. And so if you're able to get that in place, then the idea of ranging it more widely for the best candidates is an option. If, on the other hand, everybody's in the same city or in the same geographic, within an hour or two of each other, I strongly suggest, doing the in-person is far, 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 far more productive. It's very easy for somebody to stand up and go to a flip chart, for example, and just sort of draw something. It's very easy for somebody to bring, project something on a projector, then other people are standing up, looking at it and talking, etc. It's very easy, for example, to distribute a piece of paper and say, can we just look at this? I know all this kind of stuff can be done with Zoom in a certain sense, but there's something that's immediate when people are actually sitting around a table and actually able to interact on a particular challenge one way or the other, right? It just is a little bit more focused. The best investment that a CEO can make, a founder can make, okay, an executive director can make is to up level their capabilities. And the fact that you're able to look inside, if you will, at how other people in that particular role, a bunch of other people in that particular role, solve or think through a particular problem is something that is very, very special. And yes, it's possible to do remotely, okay, but it starts with the relationship and it needs a kickstart if it's going to be remote, but it's more effective if it's in person.
So far, you talked about peer masterminds between like leaders. What about within a company? With that, we'll break here for part 1 on how to leverage a peer mastermind group to accelerate your business growth. We'll pick up with more Q&A in part 2. But if anything we've talked about so far resonates with you, and if you are interested in having us help you put together a peer mastermind group, we'd be happy to do so. Do reach out. We're happy to have a conversation. info@randallcraig.com or connect on LinkedIn.